My name is Tore Frederiksen. I'm a senior cryptography engineer at the Alexandra Institute in Aarhus in Denmark. I'll be talking about a holistic approach to enhance security and privacy in digital health passports. So first up, what is a digital health passport? Well, it's basically a certification of a user's relation to a disease, or rather non-relation, in the sense that it can be a proof of a negative test, a proof of a vaccination, or proof of recovery. Basically a certification that the user is not likely to be contagious with a specific disease. In many ways, this is a lot like a normal passport, in the sense that a normal passport involves proving a feature has been granted to a user by an authority for a limited number of time in a way that can be verifiable by any third party. But whereas on a normal passport, the privilege is the travel privilege. In regards to digital health passport, what is proven is rather that the user is unlikely to carry an infectious disease. In some ways, it's also very unlike a regular passport, since a regular passport often involves exact identifiable information and actually logging of its usage, allowing to trace and to track a user when they use it. This is in particular very relevant when it comes to border crossings, where border authorities definitely want to know which users coming in, how often they go, how long they stay, and so on. But with digital health passport, it's a bit different, since it will be used very often, bars, restaurants, public transport, and so on. And there's actually no need to track or to even identify the user. All this is for is basically to ensure that whoever holds this passport is unlikely to be infectious. So what we actually want, especially taking into account that it's used often, is that we actually want to be able to not identify the user, to have some sort of anonymity, and to avoid being tracked, which is very different from a regular passport. But at the same time, we do still want the verifiability and general security of a regular passport. So if we look a little bit at like the architecture of a digital health passport, how is the actual architecture of its usage? Well, basically, it's a situation where the user has some medical data stored at certain health authorities. These will then be shared with an issuer, such as a government, that will later produce a certification of the health data by the authorities towards a specific user. The user can then use this health data to prove to a verifier that it fulfills a given policy, or more directly, that the user is unlikely to be infectious or contagious with a specific disease. In general, there's two different approaches to this. Like, one is basically where the certification is a digital signature that is just shared directly with the user and the verifier. And the other is more of a nonce-based approach, where the user gets a nonce from the issuer, it passes that on to the verifier, and then the verifier must check with the issuer whether this nonce is valid. So if we consider the different features we actually want from a digital health passport, what we basically get is that we want this to be forge-proof, in the sense that the user cannot change the certification or even create a certification out of thin air. We want binding, in the sense that the certification a user holds and gets from the authority is linked to this specific individual. It cannot be changed or cannot be given to some other user. We also want unlinkability and untraceability. Unlinkability basically means that one or more verifiers who collaborate cannot link from certifications, whether it's the same user or different users that have been authenticating or being verified at multiple locations. Whereas untraceability means that the issuer collaborating with verifiers cannot check where a specific user has used the certification. So from this, we have that the first two, the forge-proof and the binding, is basically security against a malicious user, whereas unlinkability and untraceability is protection of the user against either malicious verifiers or a malicious issuer and malicious verifiers, in order to break the privacy and anonymity aspects we would desire. If we consider the two standard approaches for digital health passports I previously mentioned, that is the digital signature and the nonce verification one, we see that both of these easily achieve forge-proofness in regards to the security feature we want. When it comes to binding, on the other hand, Digital signatures can achieve some sort of binding, but at the cost of basically privacy and anonymity, in the sense that the user's identity will have to be included in the certificate. In the nonce verification, you don't directly have any of this unless user identifiable information is given to the verifier from the issuer when it validates the nonce. This basically means that we get both unlinkability. We don't get unlinkability and we don't get untraceability. And in fact, neither digital signature nor the nonce verification achieves untraceability. Besides these security features, some more holistic security aspects should also be taken into account. And like when we look at things as it is now, we see basically the issuer has a lot of power, and in general, the issuer will be a centralized authority. So this makes it a prime target for attacks or for malicious sysadmins or something like this, because the issuer is both responsible for aggregating the private medical data of the user and to authenticate the user and sign the tokens as well. So this basically means that we get centralized authentication, we get centralized sensitive data storage, neither of which is something we really want. So in this work, we are taking an approach of looking at the digital signature approach and basically try to enhance the security. When trying to harden the binding through secure hardware and through a binding to the verifier, we achieve untraceability by using what is known as blind signatures. And we get around the issue of centralized security by using a distributed SSO, which is a distributed single sign-on service, and the issue of centralized data storage by using secret sharing. So before going into details with this, we need to go through a little bit of preliminaries. So first of all, a blind signature is basically any kind of digital signature, but in the way where the user is able to randomize the message that should get signed in a way where a signer then signs this randomized message and the user can unblind it. And achieve a valid signature. So what this basically means is that the signer does not know what they signed. The user chooses what they sign. They don't see it. And furthermore, they cannot even recognize something they've signed later on because the user is able to remove this blinding. The second feature we need is the distributed SSO. So first I just want to outline what an SSO is. So basically, it's a system where a user delegates credential verification and attributes to an issuer instead of using it directly at the places where a user wishes to authenticate towards. So concretely, this means that the user has an account with an issuer based on username and password and so on. So it can log into this account and it can receive a token that is for the user to authenticate towards a specific service, in this case verifier 1. So it can pass on this token to verifier 1 to prove that it has an account at this place and that it is a specific user. It can do this, again, username and password, but towards another service, in this case verifier 2. In the distributed setting, well, basically what we do is that the issuer gets distributed into multiple sub-issuers or partial issuers, as we call it here. This basically means that the password verification can be done in a distributed manner. So we see here that the password is actually it's hidden from each of the partial issuers. No partial issuer ever sees the password or hash of it or anything like that in plain. When it comes to the token, well, basically all the partial issuers do partial signatures on this token. So you need an agreement between all the partial issuers in order to construct a valid token. So the features we get here is basically that the password is never stored centrally, and all partial issuers must agree to sign a specific token. So this means that as long as one partial issuer is uncorrupted, we have security, and as long as all issuers are uncorrupted, we also have reliability. So the last thing we need is secret sharing, which is basically a way of distributing data in order to hide the content, but in such a way that you can prevent manipulation for when it's reconstructed again. So basically the idea is just to additively share any secret data X by picking random shares under the constraint. They all add up to X. Then distribute these to each of the servers that need to take part in this, and include a hash digest of the actual data that must be stored there, assuming that the actual data has high enough entropy. Then just learning data from one or two of these servers that does not make you learn anything about the actual data X. And the servers can reconstruct the actual data X by basically sharing X1, X2, and X3 and reconstructing it in the RAM. So in this way, you can have data secure at rest and only be in plain understandable format in the RAM during usage. We can now make some main observations needed in order to do a main construction, which is basically that the partial issuers only need to use the message M that's part of the distributed SSO protocol in order to sign the token they send. Basically, the authentication is agnostic of them. Second observation is that blind, specifically RSA signatures, are easy to make distributed and basically integrate directly into a distributed SSO protocol. Finally, the token and a single-use certificate is basically the same. Now, the most crucial observation here is the fact that for digital health passports, what we actually need from this certification is that it either must just show yay or nay in most use cases. Basically, you just want a bit indicating whether a user is infectious, has a risk of being infectious or not. And furthermore, since this is a protocol that we assume will actually be executed in the physical world, like as me going into a restaurant or into a bar or a cinema, it means that there's no need for a certificate saying no. We only need a certificate to say yes if it's okay, and that's basically it. And yeah, that's basically it. The last thing of this is that this certificate can actually be bound to the specific protocol execution through a nonce from the verifier. So basically, with all of this in mind, we can actually show our protocol now, where basically it starts with the distributed issuer getting some data from health authorities in a secret, which they secret share amongst themselves, in order to have it secretly stored at rest. Then when a user wish to prove that they are not at risk of being contagious towards a verifier, the verifier will construct a nonce that will be given to the user. The user will then basically use this nonce along with the identifier of the verifier as a message, blind this message, and then send this to the partial issuers as part of the distributed single sign-on system. Then the partial issuers will, first of all, of course, execute the protocol for validating the user's password. Then they will restore the user's data based on the secret sharing and verify that it has not been modified. And then they will validate whether the user fulfills the requirement of getting a digital health passport. And if so, they signed blindly this nonce and sent it back. The user can then unblind this nonce and pass this on to the verifier, which can verify that this nonce is actually the one from the beginning of the protocol and that the signature is as expected. So this basically means that we get around a lot of the issues of linking by basically adding the blind signature and observing that even a malicious user, even though he gets to pick what gets signed, can't really do much, since it has to be this nonce, and this nonce is only known in this specific situation. So in that way, we can actually get untraceability very easily without adding any possible compromise of security. But anyway, with all of this, we basically get a solution that builds on top of the standard digital signature approach that still keeps the forge proofness, that gets harder, a more tough binding. We get unlinkability and untraceability by the way we construct tokens and by using blind signatures, and we get decentralized security through the distributed SSO idea and secure data storage using secret sharing, such that the private data is only live during a specific authentication of a specific user. The one downside I haven't mentioned so far is the fact that this assumes that there's a specific policy a user must fulfill in order to get approved, in order to get into whatever venue they wish to. If you want to support arbitrary policies, then it gets a bit harder. This is specifically because now the user gets to pick exactly what they get signed. There are ways to do this, and we discuss a few of these in the paper. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much for your time.